The Nun, Curse of the Nun, The Bad Nun, Nun. 4 horror movies about nuns were released in 2018. That's a lot of nun. Every single one of these movies have garbage scores across the internet, doesn't matter where you look. How many effective scares do you think were in all of these movies combined? None. So let's start with the movie that most of you are probably familiar with, The Nun. NANI? Most of you have probably at least seen the trailers or some advertisement of this movie somewhere. It's the newest movie in the Conjuring series. It was directed by a guy named Corin Hardy. I know nothing about this guy. I looked him up on IMDb. This guy has done nothing that I've ever seen. Had The Nun been directed by James Wan, it probably would have come out at least a little bit better. He's the guy that made the first 2 Conjuring movies. He's the guy that made the first Saw movie, one of the only good Saw movies. Well, I saw The Nun in theaters with my wife not too long ago, and let me tell you, it is a mess. It is awful. Did this random director and the bad ratings online scare people away? Hell no. This movie made a shit ton of money. And it's kind of sad that year after year we let these studios pump out these huge blockbuster horror films that are just awful. Always awful. Every once in a while we get one that's like kinda decent, but odds are if it's a horror movie in the current year, it's probably trash. I'm gonna take this thing off. So the movie's about this nun who isn't really a nun yet. I forget what they're called before they're nuns. Like a pre-nun, like an initiate nun. So this father guy is sent by the Pope to investigate this nun that committed suicide. None of the characters were particularly likable in this movie, so there was no tension. Whenever someone was in danger, I didn't really care. You gotta create likable characters in a horror movie. It's really important. All the scares were really weak.
Hello.
They did a pretty good job with the atmosphere, I thought, except it was way too dark. After you watch like the first 15 minutes, the rest of the movie is like pitch black. During most of the shots, the only light you'll see is like through a candle, and it's just a bunch of shades of gray on top of black, on top of gray, just lots of blackness and grayness and darkness. It's like, as much as I like sitting around in the abyss and Dark Souls, can we have some color? Does anyone have color? No? Just black? Okay. Hey, future Elvis here. I rewatched the movie and there's actually a lot of blue. So this movie is pretty much a big bruise. Although I did kind of like how Sister Irene wore white. It was a good contrast. It came across as if she was like a beacon of hope in this very dark and dismal place without directly saying it. This movie is silly in a myriad of ways. There's this ridiculous scene where Father Burke goes outside and he starts seeing ghosts and stuff. And then the ghosts push him into an open casket, close the casket, and then bury him alive. You know, they like throw dirt all up on it and then put grown grass on top of it. And he's screaming from underneath the ground. So then Sister Irene hears him somehow and digs him out. And they decide to stay at the monastery. Let's just stay. We can fix this. Even though I was just buried alive in an instant. Like that, I'm underground now. Isn't that a good indicator that you should leave? That this is a good time to get out? So throughout the film, Sister Irene consistently hears this line, Mary points the way. And it's supposed to be this clever thing, you know, like they come across a statue and its finger is pointing at a hole where you're supposed to insert a key or something. Except there's like a beam of light that's shining directly on the finger of the statue and then it reflects directly into the keyhole. It's like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do! Could it be any more obvious? The end of this movie is a complete mess. Valak is the name of the nun demon. Valak is holding Frenchie up against a wall, you know, strangling him. And the demon's just like talking to him, you know, having a conversation. It's so stupid. Normally in these horror movies, when a demon is talking to someone, it's for a reason. You know, they're either trying to manipulate them to do something or something like that. Here, the demon's just talking to him because he's like bragging, you know. You are so pathetic and I am so strong. You're never gonna get out of this alive. It's like one of those stupid scenes from Dragon Ball Z when like, you know that they're just wasting time. The best part is with Valak speaking to him, it gave him the time that he needed to escape. Why didn't they just have Valak kill him? Don't be afraid to kill people in these movies. It's a horror movie. Let it happen. So at the very end of this movie, Valak is holding Sister Irene under some water, drowning her, and Sister Irene has the blood of Christ in this glass ball, and magically she's able to suck the blood of Christ out of this glass ball into her mouth underwater. So then she plays dead, so Valak lifts her up, and when she's out of the water, she spits the blood of Christ into Valak's face. And there's a lot of blood from Christ. That is some old blood. Curse of the Nun. From the start, it's pretty obvious that this movie has a low production value. It starts with this guy sitting on a bed using a Ouija board and like a really shitty dollar store ghost gadget in order to communicate with this dead nun that's in this house. He would be using a Ouija board. He gets chased around by the nun and then he gets pulled underneath the bed, because that's not a overused horror movie trope at all. So this movie's about this girl named Anna who's living at a house that's cursed by a nun. But when she wants to leave, she can't do so because the nun wants her to stay so it can kill her and use her death to ascend to heaven or something. I don't get it, it's dumb. Throughout the movie, the nun has like a million chances to kill her, but just doesn't. There's a scene where she gets grabbed from underneath the bed, which is another really awful horror movie trope. They're littered throughout these movies. The nun grabs her and has a firm grip on her arm, but then just lets go. There's a scene where Anna's in a bathtub, but then this magic plastic gets put over it, and then it starts filling up with water, so she's about to drown. And at the last second, the plastic just like vanishes, and then she's okay. So why didn't you just kill her there? You just wanted to be merciful. Evil, merciful nun that's a ghost that wants her to stay in the house, but then also wants to kill her, but then doesn't. So then the guy that got pulled underneath the bed in the beginning shows up at the house. That's strange. Didn't he die? Well, that's because he's a ghost. But this movie wants you to be stupid. And guess what, guys? He's wearing an alien hat. Great. But that's not the hat he was wearing in the beginning. So that's kind of weird. So ghosts have a fashion sense. They can just change their clothes. All right. So then there's a scene where they're both in the garage. She's acting strangely relaxed for someone who just got attacked by a ghost multiple times.
You wanna see how she died?
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
She's tried to kill me every time I come here.
But you keep coming back.
Well, no one believes me, so might as well try to prove her existence.
So this guy tells her that he goes to this house multiple times, risking his life, in order to try and prove the existence of an evil ghost nun. Sounds legit. And then he pretty much explains that the plot of this movie that you're watching right now is unoriginal.
I mean, it's a textbook haunting, really. You know, tortured soul can't rest in peace after an untimely death. We've seen it a million times.
Are the writers of this movie that self-aware, or are they just stupid? So the rest of the movie is rehashed psychological thriller stuff. She starts seeing a bunch of stuff that isn't real, but she's still dumb enough to believe everything that she sees. But then there's a moment at the end where she escapes. And guess what? She didn't actually escape. It was all in her mind. Obviously! At the end, the nun decides not to kill her for like the 1000th time. It turns out the guy from the beginning of the movie made a deal with the nun when he was pulled underneath the bed. I guess they were both underneath there whispering to each other like, "Oh, it's quite snug down here."
Yes, it is. I need your help.
Okay, what do you need?
The next woman that comes and lives here, I need you to help me keep her here. I need her to stay in this house.
Okay, why?
Let's not bother with why, it's not really important.
Am I not good enough, or?
I'm a fucking lesbo.
Oh.
Keep your promise! I can't! Okay.
And at the very, very end, it turns out Anna really liked this guy, even though he tried to kill her, and he's a complete stranger. She just really likes him. He's got a good personality, you know what I mean? For a ghost that's trying to kill you, anyway. So he calls her name from inside the house when she finally gets out. And what does she do? She just walks right back up to the house. She doesn't even keep her distance. She's like right up next to the door, so he could just open the door and pull her in. And get this, as bad as this movie was, I still cared about Anna more than I cared about any character in The Nun. So, it's kind of sad, really. the bad nun. The movie starts out with this really annoying flickering effect with the text. Also, this movie definitely has the worst title out of all the movies I'm talking about today. The Bad Nun? You could have called it a million things better than that. The Evil Nun. The Disgruntled Nun. It's like a 3-year-old chose the name of this movie. And the saddest part is that it was originally called The Watcher, but they renamed it The Bad Nun in order to capitalize on the release of The Nun. But hey, I found out about this movie, so apparently it worked. So the movie starts with this random girl texting this guy, this very creepy and pushy guy. You know, he's like, I wanna get laid now! Come to my house now and let's fuck! And she's like, all right. Yeah, I guess I can abandon my plate of diarrhea to hang out with this random boy. Why not? Hopefully I don't fart and fill the room with the smell of nasty ricotta cheese when he's banging me from behind. But yeah, let's go to his house anyway. What comes up next is definitely one of the worst scenes in this movie. You know how characters are generally pretty stupid in horror movies? Well, this girl doesn't even have a brain. Like, it's just empty in there. There's nothing. She's the dumbest person. So she enters this random house without the guy answering the door or calling her or anything, just texting her, telling her to come in. So she goes in and she leaves the door open, which is very weird. So she sits down in this random house and she's texting this guy still, saying like, hey, where are you? I'm here. I'm just sitting downstairs, so if you want to show yourself, that'd be cool. And she doesn't even try calling him. For anybody else on earth, like even a 6-year-old, there'd be a little person in your mind with a massive red flag just waving it back and forth. Hey, this is probably not gonna work out. So then the nun in this movie closes the door and she hears it, so she finally becomes suspicious, like, oh, my one brain cell activated. It's telling me that someone's in here and they're probably not gonna be nice to me. So she closes herself off into a room and calls the police. They ask her for the address, but she just doesn't give it to them. Like, okay, you can at least be a little bit helpful. You don't know the address? How'd you get there? Blind luck? Did he send you a list of turn right here, turn left here, turn right, turn left? So then the nun just walks up nonchalantly and stabs her. She pretty much just lets it happen. But that wasn't enough, so the nun starts to drown her in a bathtub, and she kind of just sits there and lets herself drown. You have limbs, you know, like move them around, you just wiggle them, right? If you're about to die, just wiggle your limbs as hard as you can. Maybe piss and shit yourself. That's kind of gross. Maybe that'll make them go away. Who knows? So the rest of this movie follows this girl named Aisha. Her mom is mad at her that she won't stop partying and she doesn't take her studies very seriously. So what does she do? She makes her go to this bed and breakfast that's 40 minutes away and stay there for the weekend without anything to do, without anyone to see. Just tells her to go there and rot. Pretty much. That'll show her. And surprisingly, Aisha is okay with this. She doesn't seem all that bothered by it. She's like, okay, well, see you later, Mom.
Enjoy yourself. Relax. And text me when you get there.
Mm-hmm.
It's snowing as well, so you can send me a selfie.
Oh, I won't let you down.
Look,
with
his
that.
name's Dan, and he's picking you up from the station.
This girl is inhumanly lenient with her mom. If my mom told me that I was going to be in a car with this random guy for 40 minutes, driving to a bed and breakfast that I've never been to, and staying there for 2 full days with nothing to do, I would probably run away. And not only that, she's going to be alone with this random old guy that she's never met for 2 full days. I was very much expecting some weird rapey scenes in this movie because of this. Thank God there weren't any. So they finally get there, the guy shows her around, and she goes for a run because what the hell else is she going to do? She's in the middle of the forest and she accepts a call from her friend, and basically her friend's like, hey, I'm gonna drive 2 hours to see you and hang out at this random bed and breakfast with you because I have literally no other friends and I have nothing else better to do, so why not? Aisha's bored out of her skull, so she goes to this random church. She starts praying, and then the bad nun shows up behind her. I wonder, who has that exact head shape that we've seen before? You don't gotta be Sherlock Holmes to figure this one out, guys. So then Aisha exits the church, and there's this weak jump scare. Guess who it is?
Didn't mean to scare you. I see you found the church.
Oh, it's the guy. Man, I wonder who the nun is. The only other person that was around. The guy. It's not much of a twist if you ask me. They're pretty much shoving it in your face. Then there's this scene of Aisha and this guy walking in on this random French lady taking a shit. if they took her character out, it would pretty much be the exact same movie. Yeah, he attacks the French lady, she screams and bangs on the house.
Help! Hey there! Help!
But Aisha's like deaf or something, so she didn't notice. But if he killed her, because she knew about Aisha, Aisha's mom knows who this guy is and where she's staying. So if she ends up dead, who's the only possible person that she could blame? This guy is kind of stupid. He's pretty much the worst killer imaginable. During this movie, Aisha is able to call people and text people, but then her phone just randomly doesn't work whenever, you know, the movie doesn't want her phone to work.
999, what's your emergency?
Please?
Hello, what site is your
Please?
emergency?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Like she wants to call the police, but oh, my phone doesn't work right now, so I can't call the police, even though I called my best friend in the middle of the woods and it worked totally fine. Aisha's outside because she heard a sound out there. Conveniently, her friend shows up at the house while Aisha's outside. Her friend doesn't even try to call her when she gets there, so her friend's just like walking around the house, and then she gets attacked by the nun. So then the nun does something very strange. She puts Aisha's friend in a bedroom and then leaves the house, waits for Aisha to go back into the house, and then knocks on the door and tries to convince Aisha to let her in, instead of just staying in the house and attacking Aisha when she comes in. And the only reason that they do this is to confuse the audience. And then he tells her that he has cookies.
I have cookies.
You know what? You changed my mind. Come on in.
I have cookies, let me in because I have cookies. Like, what is she, 3 years old? Ooh, look, a nice tasty treat. Let me just open the door. And if he's the only person there, why would he make it so hard on himself to kill this girl? Like, what are you getting out of this? Why? Why are you doing this? It makes no sense. Hilariously, this guy reveals himself to her later on. Like, hey, look, I'm the creepy nun. The guy that you knew all along, it's me. I'm the nun. What was the point in trying to hide your identity this whole time and trying to confuse her? What are you doing, dude? I mean, clearly they try to portray him as a lunatic because, you know, in this scene, he's, you know, something's not working up there. Maybe this whole nun thing is like his kink, right? He likes to pretend he's a nun and scare people, but scaring people isn't enough. He's gotta kill them too. It's like, he wants to scare people, but also kill them. It's like, oh, yeah. And it's kind of weird because he hid his identity for the first girl. This is the world's worst killer. Hilariously, the nun kills her friend in the most pain in the ass way possible by hanging her. This old guy is pretty strong. He's lifting her body weight effortlessly with just a tiny rope. There's a billion more convenient ways to kill someone. Oh my God. At the end of the movie, Aisha gets out of the house successfully. So where does she go? Where does she go from here? The church. Like a dumbass. Where was the only other place where you saw a nun?
Oh, no, I was just inside. There's someone there. None.
A nun.
That's interesting. So let's just stop there for a second. And there's this movie playing there and she just sits there and watches it, you know? Not thinking at all that maybe this guy is after her. No, let's just sit here and... Where's the popcorn at? I want to watch this movie that's playing. It's a recording of the guy killing his nun mother who abused him. The scene in the church is awful. She gets stabbed. She's just laying there. But somehow she's able to get the strength to push herself up, get out of his grasp, close a door in front of him, lock it, and run. All without him interfering at all, like he wasn't able to stop that. When she was injured, and they use slow motion during the scene, it's kind of hard to watch, honestly. And there's multiple exits to this church, but instead of leaving the church through these other exits, he decides to sit there and cry. And where does she go after escaping him a second time? Back to the house. I know this place is kind of in the middle of nowhere, but no, Aisha's gonna run back to the place that she escaped initially, you know, the one place that is pretty much guaranteed for this creepy nun guy to show up again. Oh, but then her phone miraculously works and she calls the police and then it ends. Oh my God, just kill me. I don't want to watch anymore. I can't. Ah! last movie we're going to be talking about is just called Nun. Very simple title. You thought the other movies were bad. Just wait. This one makes those look immaculate. This movie is god awful. Everything about this movie is bad. The sound, the cinematography, the acting, the pacing. But by far the worst thing about this movie is the plot. So this random nun is seeing a psychiatrist because her ex-boyfriend is dead. So this psychiatrist that she's seeing is in cahoots with one of this nun's friends, and together they have a plan to frame the nun. So they stole $175,000 that was a donation to this church that the nun is teaching at. It was sitting in a satchel, and then the nun found the satchel, but it was empty, and it was sitting on her dining room table or something. So she tells this to the psychiatrist, like, I don't know what to do. The satchel's empty. I didn't take the money. What do I do?
I don't know how I ended up with it.
So then the nun goes to her friend's place, and the friend tells her to go fetch her something at a storage locker for her. So the nun goes to the storage locker, and she gets locked in there. Then like the next 45 minutes is basically her just stumbling around this storage facility, trying to find a way out and screaming at the cameras and stuff. It's really boring. Like nothing happens. She eventually comes across these two prisoners to make the movie more spooky or something. But they never explain the prisoners, like they're just random people that are just kept there. Like they're just random captives. Like, oh, this storage locker is an evil place. Just in case you didn't know, here's some random captives. When we finally get the reveal that it's her psychiatrist behind all this, he's not even wearing a mask. He's trying to convince her that she's insane and that she should just admit to stealing all this money so he can record it and get it as evidence against her, so he can frame her.
What?
The patient has requested the taping of this conversation to serve as a legal and binding confession.
But she won't confess. So he gets this grand idea to kill her friend with a screwdriver that has her fingerprints on it. So, you know, just frame her for murder instead. I don't get why he's going through all this trouble. Like, was the empty satchel sitting at her place not enough evidence to incriminate her? Because at that point, it's just her word against everyone else's. Like, oh, I didn't steal any money. But hey, why not send her to her storage locker and let her wander around for like a full day? Her friend during this scene is wearing a really bad wig. It's one of those really cheap ones. You know, the hair is really poofy. She's trying to wear a hat on top of it, but it sits like a foot above her head because the hairs of the wig are so cheap that it just like pushes the hat up.
Go ahead and do it. You've destroyed lives before, haven't you,
You would kill me for that amount of money. Yeah, I'm still with you.
God damn, the acting is so bad. And the weirdest thing about this movie is that she doesn't even need to be a nun. They made her a nun in this movie only because there was a popular movie coming out that they could piggyback off of. So when people search The Nun, this shitty movie pops up too. Her being a nun does nothing for this movie. It doesn't help the plot, doesn't help the character development. There's no reason for her to be a nun. There's hardly any religious backing in the plot whatsoever, except for this random scene at the end that's just like ham-fisted in there. The end of this movie is a complete train wreck. So what happens is she finds a way out of the storage facility. She runs into this guy's truck. She finds that there's ammonium nitrate on the passenger seat. She takes some handfuls and shoves them into the gas tank. Talk about a very convenient plot device right there. So she runs away on foot. The guy's following her in his truck. The truck blows up, but then randomly the screen goes black and we're presented with this scene of the psychiatrist as a priest and her friend as another nun. And I'm not sure what they're doing here. They're speaking Latin, really poor Latin, by the way. You can tell that this is like the second time that they're saying these words.
Fiat mescordia tue domine supernos.
And during this scene, there's like some of the worst shaky cam I've ever seen. Like instead of being deliberate with it, it almost looks like the cameraman's arm hurt or something while filming and just couldn't keep his arm steady. He's like, oh God, I gotta get this in frame. And then in the next scene, she wakes up in the storage facility. So like the last half an hour of this movie just didn't happen. It was all in her head. Oh my God. It was one of those, oh, it was all a dream plot devices, which is basically the worst plot device in existence. Because when you do that, you make so much of the movie irrelevant. The only reason you should do that is if it's such a powerful moment that it makes up for all the lost time. But here, it's kind of just an insult to the viewer. It's like, oh, you're already watching this shitty movie, but what we're gonna do to shove it in your face is make it so the last like 30 minutes that you saw didn't mean anything. All right, guys, I hope you liked this video. Happy Halloween, by the way. If you like spooky shirts like this, you can get them at alienclothing.com. There's a bunch of spooky shirts that you can buy over there. Spooky shirts. Unfortunately, we don't have any nun shirts, but hey, maybe someday. Thank you to all these people that have pledged me on Patreon. It means a lot. If you would like to join this group and see your name scrolling up, just go to my Patreon. It's just $3 a month, and then you'll see your name at the end of all my videos. Isn't that neat? Isn't that pretty cool? My voice is hurting from ranting for so long, and I'm just so sick of talking about nuns. I hope I never see another evil nun movie in my entire life. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.